And we're back here on the Media Virus Podcast. This is the B block of episode 193. Matt?
So we've got the really, really good opportunity of speaking with John Barrett. Johnny is sitting in New Hampshire.
Yes.
And he's the New Hampshire State Service Officer for the VFW. Now, I explained in the last segment, Johnny, I met him in college, and or I call it 13th grade. Johnny actually went to college. Like, he went to school. Like, he went to class. Like, he did the work. It's, but it was one of those things where we were like, who's this teacher smoking in the courtyard? Because he was, you're about 10 years older than us.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, of course. And so, like, the immediate draw was this guy can legally buy booze. But then we started hanging out with him, and he was cool.
Go figure.
But you had just returned home. I know that I'm going to say this, Johnny, with all love in my heart. You had a bitterness about you. Like, you had a really sharp, sarcastic, bitterness is the best word, I think, to describe, and not like just the way you would kind of react and like your insults and what came off the top of your head.
Yes.
And I have not heard, that out of you. So, that there had to be a metamorphosis. There had to be like, you had to, what did you do? Like, right. Like, I had a kid.
Right.
And so when you have a kid, your social life pretty much stops. Mm-hmm. Where did you go? What happened? What was your trajectory at that point?
Well, I guess the best way to explain that, though, because I got home on Thanksgiving Day in 1993. I was medically retired from the Navy because I came down with type 1 diabetes in service. I planned to spend 20 years in. So when I found out that here I am in my 20s, I don't get to be in my 40s, and he goes, "You're going home, kid." I didn't have any say in it. And it took until about May of 94 before I finally got all of my paper from the Department of Navy, Navy Med Board, and the VA. So by the time you saw me, the VA had let me know that you're eligible for college benefits. We'll go ahead and put you into some school to see if you can do something else other than what you planned. But you've nailed that, I think, better than anybody else I've ever known. It must have been very, very telling, or you saw that a great deal. Yes, there was a lot.
And Johnny, it's not that I saw it at the time. Like, I had to go through a metamorphosis. Like, I had to go through my own emotional struggles, and just, I've been kind of just looking back on our, kind of reminiscing.
Right.
And thinking that you had a real hard edge to you. And that's part of what I liked about you. That was, when we were younger, that was how you were supposed to be.
Right. Well, to be very honest with you, I guess the best way to put it with the benefit of hindsight is that I didn't take very well to. I had a very difficult time so my whole life plan, as far as serving 20 years and seeing a lot more of the planet than I could dream of, is gone, whether I like it or not.
So the military was a dream for you. Like, the military is what you wanted to do.
It was something that I figured that if I wanted to see a lot of places on planet Earth, and he goes that this is a great way to be able to do that. Also, I just feel like I wanted to do something that I could look back on and say, this was worth the trip. It was worthwhile. So when I got the notice at the VA hospital in Groton, Connecticut, that I had type 1 diabetes, by the time I got home, was I very bitter and very angry? Yes. Because it was not at all in my schedule, my plan for the next 20 years.
Right. I left it in place.
Yeah. Because you are going to do the right thing and make sure that, because my national is going to see this, that some of those words are made nicer words that you're putting in there.
I sincerely apologize.
No, that's okay. You're being very honest, and it's okay. As a sailor, do I know language like that? A little bit, yes. But no, you actually nail it right on the head. Because one, it's like, what do I want to go to school for? This isn't really what I had planned. So when I came in there, that the VA said, this is the best place to put you near your home. In a way, one, I felt very out of place because most of the people that I knew when I were kids, I hadn't been there for a very long time. So all those people were gone, married elsewhere. So I didn't really know anybody outside of my family. And the one thing that I will tell you, Mike, about the experience at BCC as it was then, I forget which one of us friends put it this way, but it was sort of like we all gravitated toward the smoking area outside in between the two parts of the building.
And I get that. My college experience is actually very similar to what Matt explained. I didn't finish, but the time that I was there, it was a relatively small school in the area.
Yes.
They were a college then. They're now an accredited university and much larger. But they were just starting that trajectory to grow when I was there. Yes. But they had a lot of business related stuff, a lot of and not traditional business classes. Like they had an airline business program, and they had
start an airline. That's a great idea.
They had a nursing business program, but so like they had these great business programs that related to other things, and that's kind of what made them popular.
Right.
And being right across from our local airport, which also houses guard base, right, there was a lot of guys who saw it as a great place. That, hey, you know what? I know that's there. I we've bumped into these students in the diner, and so the guys that were on the GI Bill would kind of gravitate there because it was and they had a class structure that was good for working people. So the guys that were retiring out of the service could get a part-time or full-time job and still come to college full-time,
right? Because
they had these great schedules. And I knew a lot of guys my first year that I was there that, a lot of them were they had just gotten out of their hitches, that they went in, they did their hitch, and they're coming out because they were there for the GI Bill. But I also had 3 guys that were in the program that I was in for communications, that they were lifers that had been in, and they were in their late 40s and retired because they went in at 18 and now they're retired. So take this GI Bill and go to school while I can draw enough pension that I can get by, and then I'll go have my second, I'll go have a second career.
Yeah, but the point that I think that Johnny was trying to make was, and my problem with BCC, I think this was my issue, is that none of the friends I made had class at the same time as me. So,
and I experienced that as a lot of
people would come, like I'd be out smoking with somebody, right? And they would go to class and I would have class, but somebody else would come out that I was friends with and wanted to talk to. So I'd skip, you wind up skipping. I made a lot of stupid mistakes, but we were always hanging out in the fucking courtyard, playing with guitars and throwing shit at each other. And
our smoking areas were like that. Yeah. They were very, and the neat thing was, it wasn't a bunch of 18, all a bunch of 18-year-old kids. There was people from kind of everywhere, and it was a good experience to get to know these people who were not necessarily like me, and realize that you're not in high school anymore, and you're in the I was in the world. I wasn't in some microcosm of a university.
That's my problem, is I wasn't ready for the world yet.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I will say that I forget which one of them that said it, Matt, but whoever it was described it perfectly as far as all the different types of people we were that gravitate there, sort of like in the old Christmas, whichever one was it, Frosty Snowman, the Land of Misfit Toys. It essentially is what we were. We didn't really fit into and didn't want to fit into any of the categories.
Right.
So we felt very out of place everywhere else except for there. No one judged shit. No one.
Yeah, like we were like you kind of wouldn't know we were all hanging out.
Yeah.
Unless you like paid attention to how we were all hanging out. Because it was just like this a wide expanse. It was like the Breakfast Club on
yes,
acid. It
Absolutely.
Was. It really was. There was a lot of like prepubescent angst, and not prepubescent, but teenage angst, a lot of anger. There was a lot of, and I think we all I think that's what we all had in common was this burning anger at life. And that's what made us kind of friends.
Yeah.
Because we all had the same kind of perspective that life's not fair and there's nothing you can do about it.
In my first semester, the smoking group was an Iraq War vet, one of the professors, a guy who we found out was a professor much later on. We didn't realize he was a professor until halfway through the semester. Some stoner guy that was done following the dead, so he decided to go to school, and me and a handful of others. But you wouldn't have put any of us together in the same room if you saw us in a separate lineup. But we all showed up there for the, because we had this common time and we all had this common habit. And I get it. It's an interesting place to be.
Yes. So did you finish BCC, Johnny? Did you
Yes. Well, and he goes, but see, I got a bonus that other people don't get. There's fine print in actually when you go ahead and sign up. Not only did I go ahead and get a degree from there and meet all of you, but that's also where I met Kim. So I got 2 months after I got my diploma, we both did. I got a wife from BCC. How many other people get that kind of extra? Usually you get like cum laude or sigma cum laude, the extra letters after your name for honors. He goes, that is the ultimate honor where you can go ahead, not only get a fantastic group of friends, a real rogues gallery of friends, but I also got a wonderful wife out of it too. And we're still married 26 years later.
Congratulations.
Yes. Yeah. One thing I miss most about that is the pork roll, egg, and cheese on a Kaiser roll. I have not been able to replicate that sandwich. It's almost impossible. Just how they made it. I don't know how they fried the egg. There's something I'm missing.
Well, there's a lab there that did all kinds of types of testing, medical related stuff in one of the classrooms. It could very well have been.
You're absolutely right. So you graduate from BCC. You and Kim fall in love, get married, I guess, and then what's from there?
Well, what happened is that we had planned to get married while we were still at BCC. We had known each other for a while, and she got used to me to where she felt very comfortable with me. That there was a kind of person she was looking for, a little bit more stable and beyond like the party phase and things like that. And at first, I wasn't sure, and he goes, I'm older than her. I don't know if that's something that, but she saw beyond that. She goes, there's things I can talk to you about. I can be a goofball about, talk about things like architecture, history, music, anything, or just be a goofball and nerdy. And you know what? It fits really, really well. You're not pretending to be something you're not. This is who you are. These are the things that I really look for in a person that can be a decent human being. So I was very, very blessed. So even though it was not great timing in the sense that my career ended, there was probably a darn good reason for it. I would have never met her had it not been for that. So out of something that was not so good, kind of like the expression, no mud, no lotus, the Buddhist expression, you got the mud from that, but a fantastic lotus grew out of it. And I'm still very, very blessed to be able to say that she loves me to this day. As nerdy as I am, she can out nerdy me at any time that she likes. And that's quite all right with me. But we got married, though, in February on Friday the 13th, 1988. I had a job offer.
It had to be 98.
Well, but Friday the 13th, though, anyone says...
Yeah, no, but it had to be 1998, because 1988 was 10 years before that.
Yeah, that's right, because my math stinks. Sorry about that. Yes.
That's all right.
But I had a job offering in New Hampshire, and as much as we loved the family, there was a part of us that goes, why don't we just have our own space? We really like New Hampshire. So within 48 hours, we had our marriage, we packed, and we moved up to New Hampshire, and I started my job about a week after I got there. And it really wasn't until...
I guess it wasn't the VFW that offered you the job up there.
No, but you bring up, you touched on this earlier, and it's a very good point. There's really two aspects or two forks of the road that involve in my life VFW. The first part, as far as being a member, was that my mom was dating Al at that time. She had known him for many years before he became my stepdad. He was a Vietnam veteran, and when I first got back, he really didn't pressure me per se, but kept asking me, why don't you go ahead and join the post? And at that time, I wasn't thinking about that because I just got home. Do I really want to be reminded of stuff that in some ways still makes me very angry, had a tough time coping with? So looking at it now, I don't know if I did it because it seemed like a good idea, or maybe in part because, well, if I say yes and I do it, maybe he'll leave me alone about it. Maybe it's a little bit of both. And he goes, but that's where my time as a member at Post 3020 in Delran began. But my career in the VFW began while I was up here in college. I was able to finish my veterans benefits. And while I was going to college up here, finishing my degree, you could be a work study. And I said, I don't really know what I want to do with my life outside of, I had been doing retail and working in warehouses. People are great at that. But it left me feeling very empty. It paid the bills, but I go home and they made their quota. I guess the manager's going to get a bonus. Hooray for them. But it left me very, very empty. Like, there's got to be something better. I can't do this for the rest of my life. So when I was back at college and I mentioned I'd like to do something around veterans, work with them or be part of something with them. And at my work study happened to be at the VA regional office in the building that I work in now. They put me in there being a file clerk to help one of the other veterans that works down there. His name was Frank Warden. It turns out that Frank was the brother of Nancy, who I work with now, and she has been admin at the VFW upstairs for years. So he went ahead and put in a word with her because Pete, who had been up there for 26 years, was going to retire. And so for some crazy reason, they thought that I might be a really good person to talk to. One, so Pete could retire and rest. And two, because we need somebody crazy enough to go ahead and take this job. And Pete told me right out, he was a Vietnam veteran. He was airborne and a Ranger, a very tough as nails human being. He said to me, you don't have to be crazy to do this job. That's okay. You'll go train in how to do that very well if you're not crazy already. He said, yes, but he was being quite honest. He goes, so it was because of, I talked to my stepdad about it at the time. He devoted a great deal of his work to veterans in New Jersey. And he said to me, you know what, this is a job that will not make you famous or rich, but it's something that you feel like you've done something useful if you can make somebody's life better. And that's when it went instead of being, what about me as far as being happy, that, you know what, he goes, it's not just about me being happy. If I can do something for other people to make the world better, and you're able to say that about me, then you know what, what's wrong with that? That's a great, why not? So
I think that's where people really find fulfillment, is when they find that thing that allows them to help others.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can't, the people striving for, personal fulfillment and looking inside themselves for that are never, ever going to find it.
Mm-hmm.
You only find that by reaching out and trying to help. I'm not looking for that, so that's fine. I'm good.
Well, I can back you up on that because I mentioned I didn't finish my college time. That's because one summer I got a job working for a traffic control company. I was out there flagging, just turning the stop slow paddle, and I found it rewarding. It was good work. It paid good, but I was keeping people safe. I worked for a company that endeavored to keep people safe, and I ended up working for that company for about 30 years, and up until this time last year. And it was very rewarding because every day I went in, I touched something that kept people safe. I truly believe that every day whatever I did saved lives.
And made people late for work.
Sometimes.
I made someone late today.
Everything has its bonuses, Matt. I mean, everything has its perks.
Remember, no mud, no lotus. Remember that.
That's right. So what is it that a state representative does for the VFW? Like, what's your day-to-day like?
Day-to-day. Maybe the first thing to tell you is that one thing, I have sent you some links about VFW, the national website.
Mm-hmm.
One thing is it's not like going to America's Got Talent and audition and maybe Simon rings the bell to keep you or not. There's a lot more to it than that. Part of it is that, one, not only do I have to go through the state of New Hampshire leadership to make sure that my background check is good, I'm VFW eligible to be a member. They also refer me to our national headquarters in Washington, D.C., to make sure that they are aware of who I am. And then what happens is you go through an accreditation process. What that does involve the VA, their office of the General Counsel, Office of General Counsel, OGC. What they do is they do a background security check on you, because if I'm granted accreditation to do my work. Part of it is I have to have access to VA records for people that have treatment records, benefit records. They want to make sure the people that are doing that are on the level and a very, very good character. So it took a great deal of that to go through. And so I'm very, very happy that they saw enough of me to do that. But I'm also very grateful to October 5th marks the beginning of my 20th year doing this. At that time, our leadership did not know who I was. And they took a real leap of faith. Like, you know what, Pete wants to retire. We don't really have anybody that seems to want to step forward to do this. So the tremendous leap of faith on their part. And I'm very, very happy that they've thought enough of me that I've made a good return on their investment. So that for me is a tremendous accomplishment. There's a lot of folks that don't stay in any jobs anymore very long for one reason or another. So that they think that much of me.
You know, some people have a hard time holding the job. Some people can't keep their mouths shut. I don't need to defend myself to you, John. Okay.
No, just no, but what
that wasn't an attack. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But what I do know is that there's some people though.
I thought that was going to be way funnier. I'm sorry.
No. It really is. It's true. There are some jobs that you reach a point where it's time for me to get off at this stop because it takes a lot out of you in a lot of ways, physically, emotionally. Yes. The job for me, though, once I became accredited, just to give you both an idea of how long I've been doing this, usually if you're accredited now through one of the VFW, there's about 1,400 of us across the country that are accredited in the VFW alone. And he goes that you now have 5-digit accreditation numbers once you're assigned one. To go to show you how long I've been doing this, my accreditation number is 3 digits long. It's in the Office of General Counsel, their record of accredited people on file. 572 is my number. You can verify that. So yes, that's how long I've been doing this. But what happens with the work we do, a lot of it, some of it's emotional. You have to be a very good listener. You also have to have a pretty good broad knowledge of the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations in terms of what kind of benefits could you potentially be eligible for, so we know the correct forms to fill out, the right information we need you to bring so that the VA can help process it better and more accurately. And that's something that comes about, that aspect is from training. Our membership dues fund our training. We get 80 hours of it a year twice. We get 40 hours in April and 40 hours of it in September. And that's to make sure we're up to date on changes in federal regulations, benefits, to make sure that we're giving the most current information out to people that might need something that could be a help to them. So there's a lot of that. But a lot of us, you have to be a very good listener, regardless of what era you served in. It doesn't matter if you're officer enlisted. We're all veterans now. There's some things that we do have in common, like how was it for you when you got home? There's things that you can often talk about more with a veteran than you can someone who is not. That's something I've learned over on. It's sort of not Dr. Phil. I detest Dr. Phil. I don't use that as an example to be. What I mean is that you've got to be a good listener and just understand, and like, this resonates with me. I get it. I want them to feel that they're not alone and that there's no such thing as a dumb question. So that's a lot of what we do. And he goes, there's a great.
I mean, let me just jump in here, John.
Sure.
Is this to sum up?
Yes.
You and what a state officer does is basically you're a guide for veterans.
That's a great way to put it.
To the because there's no way they know all this.
You're exactly
because you just said you went through 80 hours a year of training.
Yes, every year.
Every year, 80 hours. He didn't go through 80 hours, and you've gone for 20 years. So I don't want to. I hate math. It's probably something like 1,600 hours of training on all the ins and outs of what they're entitled to.
You've nailed it really, really well on how you put that. A very good example I've used with you, and Mike, this might be helpful for you, I guess. A good way I put it to Matt is that we're not lawyers, we're advocates. Advocates, though, is on 2 different levels for VFW. First, at the much larger, the macro level, we were founded in 1899 by about 14 members that were veterans of the Spanish-American War. It was because of their efforts during the outcome and the fallout of World War I while it was going on that they marched upon Washington and compelled Congress, whether they liked it or not, to form the first version of the Department of Veterans Affairs, because there was no way to take care of the broken, the injured, take care of the families of people that were lost. They made it a point to let them know that You sent us off to war. You have an obligation to take care of the broken and make things better for them.
And I want to jump in and just kind of remind the listeners that World War I was a brutal hamburger factory. It was the World War I was, we made up some war crimes. You know what I mean? Like a lot of shit happened during World War I that shit was so bad, stuff was so bad they made rules about it.
Well, and then it's also one of the first large scale wars during the post-industrial revolution,
post-industrial age, and
we have machines that we can use.
Right. Well, yeah. But the one thing about advocacy on that, though, Matt, is too, it's something I tell people, and they're a little surprised. I said, if you do the math, though, 1899 is when we were formed. It took about 20 years before the first version of the Department of Veterans Affairs came about. So we've been doing advocacy work about 2 decades longer than the VA has been in existence. So some people are not aware of that, going, yes. And it was because of our efforts that there is a VA, a way to take care of people now where there was not. It was good luck to you when you get home.
If it wasn't for pressure applied,
yes,
from your organization, from its founding, there probably wouldn't be a VA.
Correct. And it's still going on today. Our headquarters in Washington, if you walk out the back door, right across the street is the Hart Senate office building. Our folks commute over there on a regular basis to testify in front of Congress as far as if there's a concern. Why should we spend this so much for medical care for veterans? It's an awful lot in the budget. Why is this type of benefit going to be very useful? Why should we go ahead and sign off on it? And it's because
because you send a bunch of kids off to kill each other. The ones that made it back deserve much more than they have.
And as time goes on, as conflict after conflict, everybody who comes home from the next conflict is generally entitled to less and less and less of a benefit from the VA or wherever. So you guys do very important work.
Well, thank you. I think it's a testament to, though, the resilience and persistence of the VFW since the beginning, that our core, why we were established, has never gone away. If some members of Congress prefer to call us maybe quietly out of earshot from microphones, annoying or a pain, that's good. Then that means that we're doing our job. And that means that we're not going away. And they have to remember, because we're going to remind them that you folks, we vote for you. You folks, our taxpayer dollars go to help these things happen. Please go ahead and keep that in mind when you decide what to fight over in the budget, what things count and what things do not. But to your point, though, to a more micro level for us, Matt, and my advocacy for me is, for example, since we're not attorneys, one, we do not charge anything for our services, so it'll save you a tremendous amount of money. Two, is that you're correct. When you navigate through the VA healthcare system and claim system process, you're absolutely right. The way I put it when I first began, Matt, is that I tell people I'm a translator, and they look at me, what do you mean? I take that 15 pages of legalese if you get a form in the mail from the VA, and half of it is instructions on how to fill it out. I tell you, you don't need that, because I'm going to tell you what things you need to bring with you, and information to bring. So all I'm going to do is ask you that information. I'm going to fill it in this form, and we'll be able to fill it out. So one, you're not alone, ever, because I'm always there for you. Two, there's no such thing as a dumb question. If government forms were so darn easy to fill out, we would likely not have a job. And he goes, they're not. When a government says a comprehensive form, that's a very polite way I've learned of saying it's so darn big, nobody really knows everything is in it.
No, because it's written in government.
Well, but
people don't understand how government works.
Well, that's true. But your point is, but one thing, a lot of anxiety, a lot of our veterans have, there is some from service, yes. But a lot of it is that if they've tried to do this alone, like I did when I got out, because I didn't know offices like ours existed, I just thought it was the local bar at the post, is that I give the same thing back to people I didn't get when I went through it alone, is that if you come in with that look on your face, like, is this really worth going through that? This is a lot of stuff to go through. Is it really worth doing all this? Make sure to tell them that, one, I've been through it myself. So what I do is part of what I've learned about what I did not get. I make sure that every client that gets the thing that I did not, so that when they may come in with anxiety, when you walk into the office, You're going to hopefully feel a heck of a lot better and have a lot of your questions answered when you leave. You'll be better off when you leave than you were when you came in. That's really part of my goal, is to make it that hopefully less stressful for them.
So, like, if there were, like, someone's getting discharged this week,
Yes.
For whatever reason, I mean, is it better to, like, contact the VFW before you contact the VA, or does it matter? Is it just kind of like if they have, if you hit a snag, come see us type of thing, or do you start from the beginning?
Well, I will say, if you've seen on the browsing the internet, you'll see something once in a while. It's called TAP for short. I think it's a Transition Assistance Program. The VA is doing very good about a lot of installations in the United States, some outside the United States, teaching people that if you're going to retire or you're getting out soon, these are things that if you thought about or you have conditions now, put them in now if you get a chance. Some people are just very, very anxious to get home and want to put that behind them and get home. And that I understand. So what I do is I tell them that, if you are just more anxious to go back to your home or more comfortable and you didn't want to deal with that, maybe stay longer where you're at, get a hold of us when you first get back. And because we have a lot of our folks that we have a lot of referrals from people, their friends have been getting out and they're living in different parts of the country, Florida, Virginia, Kentucky. I've got one in Maryland and other places, which they could go to their offices around the country, but it's one of the kindest compliments to go, I worked with this guy, go ahead and give them a call. It doesn't matter if you're in another state. It can still help get you started so you're not alone in that process.
So that was my next question. Was, if you are a veteran returning home, do you just reach out to your state representative? I keep making it absolutely clear that you're the New Hampshire state service officer, but you can handle somebody else's, but each state has their own, right? Or
yes, there's a very good point for those that are listening, or Mike, even if you two want to do this. Also, Ricky, if you're in there in the background, hi, by the way, I've never met you before. Nice to meet you. If you go on to vfw.org, this is a very good example I'll use. That is the national website for us based out of Kansas City. When you get onto that home page in the upper right-hand corner, you've got those little lines like the box that you can click on, and there'll be other options that'll pop down from that. What you can do is click on that, and then where it says assistance, which is the fourth box down, you click on assistance, and what you'll do is it'll give you some information there about who we are and what we do. There's also a way for you to click on which state you belong to. For example, if you're in Texas, I do know our gentleman out of Fort Hood. His name is Tom Parker. He's one seriously talented gentleman. He's a great human being. That way you have email addresses, phone numbers for them, street addresses. So if you're going to go back to Texas, for example, even before you get home, if you want to send them an email and go, Tom, I'm going to be home starting September 1st. I'd like some help putting in some claims. Always reach out to them in that way first, because the amount of work that we do is very, very large. So that way we can make sure that it works at a good time for both of you and that you get everything you need. And they're going to take very good care of you no matter which state you're in when you get to those. So I can see what you're looking on there on this. I don't have my reading glasses on, so bear with me.
I'm just sort of rolling through the options at the top, because there's a lot of great options up here. You can find a post. You can find out more about the VFW in general.
Yes.
Allies that work with you. There's a contact form that you can fill out.
Yes. One thing I will tell you is that each of those offices, each of those folks have a tremendous amount of experience. And the great thing is that just about every one of them that you talk to has gotten out of the service and done a lot of the same things that those folks are doing. So it's not like a manual tells them that, well, this is what you have to say. It's customary. No, they've lived it. So when you go in and talk to people, it's not something they tell you just to make you feel better. No, they know what it's like, and it helps to teach them to be better, to help everybody that comes along after them. That's really a terrific asset to have.
And I think it's something that, I've not served, but a lot of folks.
Well, I as well am a coward. A
lot of folks around me have in my family as well. And one of the things that, as somebody who hasn't served, that you need to realize is it's important that guys who are coming home have somebody to talk to that they feel like they can relate to. And in a lot of cases, that means somebody that has served in some capacity somewhere.
Okay.
You know,
right.
You may not be in the same branch, but you understand the training, the things that you see when you deploy and you go out to do. And if you don't have somebody that you can relate to on that level, it can be hard. But if you do have somebody that you can relate to on that level, it sometimes gives you that leg up on getting the help that you need, because to have somebody that can look across and say, hey man, I don't know what you saw, but I understand because I saw things as well, and I'm going to help you through this because I've been here too. That goes miles to just make the situation a little bit better.
Because I think you both have this up here, and for folks that are keeping an eye on this at home, if you go to that page where you click on where it says though for assistance, and you click on the first section on there, it says VA claims and separation benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Just in full disclosure, that the two people you see in that image there, the gentleman behind the desk is Mr. Chris Pasenkowitz, who is our deputy director in Washington, D.C. He also helped run the office in Detroit. So you talk about a man that had a tremendous amount of experience at a much larger scale, go from AAA baseball to the big league, the big show in Washington, D.C. He brought a wealth of experience with him to be able to do stuff on a large scale. And the lady that sits across from him in that image, her name is Cindy Noel, and she specifically specializes in cases for folks that are within, for example, 100 days of retiring from service. Those claims are known as BDD, benefits deliverable at discharge. And she will go ahead and basically, while you're in, say, this is what I need from you so that the VA can get started on it. So by the time you get done and transfer or make the transition out, that a lot of stuff is already going to be done for you. She is one fantastic and seriously efficient lady. And if you are one of those areas where she operates out of, I believe she's out of the Maryland, DC, Virginia area, but she's one seriously smart cookie, sharp lady. She's awesome.
I want to recap real quick. Big Daddy's join us. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. How y'all doing?
I'm doing fantastic. We're talking to my friend John Barrett. He works for the VFW. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's the place where you can like just rent a hall if you need to. But they do some
rented a hall or two from the VFW.
Yeah, I think that I've had 2 funerals in the VFW in Delran, which Johnny mentioned. But
on Fairview Avenue. Yep.
Yeah, I've my brother and my niece. We had their the after party there. Very familiar with that. But no, they do some fantastic work helping veterans navigate the VA. They basically, Johnny's job is to fight with the VA all day.
It's an important job. I worked at the VA for a couple of years, so I know I understand how important that work is supposed to be when it fires on all cylinders.
Yes. One thing I can attest, though, for you, Big Daddy, if it's okay, is that one thing that sometimes is not clear with some of our veterans is it's not adversarial meant us versus them, is that the big thing is that when you get paper, as you know very well from the VA side of the fence, if somebody calls the VA and says, I want to put in claims, with all the forms that they're going to send you, assuming that you're going to do it, is about 30-odd pages. About half of it is just how to fill it out. A lot of them get very frustrated at that point and go, this is crazy. So one thing that we do is go, 1, breathe. 2, don't worry about that part of it. We're just going to have you bring the information in so we can help you fill it out. But the other thing, Matt, as you touched on earlier, and all 3 of you, one of the most important messages about the VFW is most people, the big concept a lot of people have is that, well, all the funds for the membership goes to funding the bar. No, actually, if you're very happy with the work that I do for you and our colleagues do all over the country, it is done at no charge to you whatsoever and is paid for by membership dues, which involves helping make sure we get our training every year and to make sure we are as up to date. So it's one less thing in your life you have to worry about. And hopefully when we're done, make life better for you once we're done doing that work.
In my opinion, it's God's work.
Absolutely.
It's a shame that you're needed. but it's great that you're there.
I'm just happy that at the end of my life, though, people can say that, yes, that man drank more coffee than any industrial piece of machinery I've ever known in my life. However, and he goes, when he did that, though, he also did some things that made somebody's life better. If people can say that about me or anything else, then that means that I've spent some really good time, made the best of the time I'm here, and done something good with it.
That's an amazing legacy. At the end of it all, like, aren't we just trying to leave this place a little bit better than it was before we got here?
Exactly right. Yes.
Not me. I want to make a mess.
I haven't been to church for a while on full disclosure, but amen, brother. You're absolutely right about that. Yes.
I just want to point and laugh as it burns. That's what else you're going to do. You know what I mean? So, John, dude, it is amazing, the work that you've done, since I've spoken with you last. It warms my heart that I know you. Like, I'm glad I know you. And but I've worked for a lot of different dealerships. I've sold cars and appliances and television sets and furniture. That's it. I was a carpenter for a while. Just to catch up with you. I'm currently unemployed and do a podcast.
You're wonderful. You are a wonderful human being. And one of the things that made my experience when I got home better is you're one of those people that no matter what kind of chaos was going on, even if I was not having a easy time transitioning out, you still found ways, even if I didn't know you that well, I wasn't sure whether to be Mo Howard and smack you in the back of the head for what you just said.
I think you didn't know me enough to strike me.
No, but plus though, you're a lot bigger than I am. I knew better. I'm not.
Yeah, and I was pretty volatile at that age. I didn't have I didn't have an off switch. You know what I mean?
But what I mean though is that you reminded me that sense of humor sometimes is, if you didn't have that to help you get through some difficult times, like Jimmy Buffett said, if we couldn't laugh, we would all go insane. And you reminded me that yes, you do have to have some things to laugh at. And you were one of the first people when I got back that reminded me, like, you will not break your face to laugh. It's okay to do that. Remember how to do that. And so I thank you for that.
It's always been important to me to be able to make my friends laugh. I don't know why that's it always. I mean, and the more people I would get to listen to whatever story I was telling, the better. I used to, for a while, I was trying to start my own cult, where I had a couple of followers, and most of the we were in BCC sitting on the steps. Most of my directives were, don't wear that hat with that shirt as people walk by. But chaos is where I kind of live. It's maybe where I'm most comfortable. So that's where I find, that's almost where you find the humor. That's kind of what this show is. This show is us getting together with these incredible news stories to, kind of look at the chaos and see if we can make each other laugh.
Right.
Like me and Mike sit in the morning and we kind of plot out the stories we're going to talk about. And sometimes we let out some jokes, but most of it is we keep everybody else in the dark. Nobody else knew we had a guest this week.
Right.
Only me and Mike knew.
I didn't either until a few days ago either.
So because I just, it was about a week ago.
I knew. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it was about a week ago, because I saw that you posted something, and I misunderstood what was going on.
Sure.
But I was like, it still looked interesting. I thought you worked for the VA for some reason. I'm like, yeah, I want to talk to you about that. I want to see what your experiences is. I want to,
And if it's helpful, and as Big Daddy can tell you as a VA person, that very, very good VFW people, it's not a matter of, it's like taking a piece of equipment and a really, really nice car that it's a great model. There's some great things to it. And he goes, if there's any way to help make it run even better, there's ways that go ahead and makes it easier for people to operate. And he goes that why not? And he goes, and that's the great thing about what we do. It's not like WrestleMania in the 1980s where we come out of one ring and they come out of the other with folding chairs, whatnot. No, it's a matter of that. These are some things that sometimes leadership is not aware of in terms of, are you aware that burn pit exposure up until recently, Big Daddy, you probably know, it was until the signing of the PACT Act in 2022. There was a lot of diseases and things that Gulf War veterans, post 9/11 veterans have that are not common in people their age. They're getting them much earlier because it was so darn toxic over there. A lot of those folks, even in their 30s, are now already gone. And it took a while for VA to really understand it. This is not just affecting a small group. It's like herbicides, where you've got that generation of people that served over there have a concentration of diseases much higher than the ones that did not serve over there. So it was a matter of just doing the math and put it together. Is that pretty accurate to say from the VA point of view? Is that accurate?
Yes. Now, at the time that I worked there, a lot of it was trying to raise understanding of the effects of Agent Orange and the mustard gas.
Yes.
So this is very simply that in this time period.
That's correct. Yes, it's
Right.
sort of like, unfortunately, like the weapon of choice in World War I was often things like mustard gas. It was also the first time we had weapons that once the shell exploded, it was meant to go ahead and in very small particles cut as many people to ribbons as you could. The first time something, used to refer to them as daisy cutters, I believe was the term back then. Very, very brutal and very terrible injuries. During Vietnam, the signature condition has become known as Agent Orange, things related to it. This one, burn pit exposure, there are much more conditions, more than I can pronounce and spell. I can send you a copy of that, Matt, if you'd like to see it later on or put it up. But yes, they have signature ones because as we evolve through time, unfortunately, with progress also comes to change how we do warfare. What kind of things do we use? It becomes more deadly. It becomes more effective.
Well, I mean, warfare is the tip of the spear when it comes. Warfare and pornography are like the tip of the spear when it comes to technology.
Yes, they will.
You know what I mean?
They drive innovation.
Like there was cell phone technology like well before it was given to the consumer market. You know what I mean? So like military drives tech, like they're always constantly trying to come up with, with bigger and better ways to kill people.
Yeah.
And when you find bigger and better ways to kill people and it does its job really well, sometimes it affects people you didn't mean for it to affect.
With the fallout, the collateral.
The collateral damage. Yeah.
And one thing Big Daddy can attest to as well with his time with VA, in World War I, they didn't know about things like anxiety, depression, or post-traumatic stress disorder. It was often referred to as shell shock, which had a lot in common with if you had your bell rung concussions from the shells going off around you. A lot of people, I use this because you're in and around the Philly area. One of our Philly Hall of Famers, Grover Cleveland Alexander, was a World War I veteran. He suffered from shell shock, which caused him to have seizures. They didn't know how to treat that then. The way that they treated it, basically, because there were no benefits, he drank alcohol to go ahead and hopefully reduce, basically, he was quite numb to it. So they accepted him more because, unfortunately, of his drinking, because no one knew how to deal with that. It was kind of one of those subjects that was no one to touch. But PTSD was then, and he goes, the horror of what they went through, they didn't have a name for it. A lot of those people lived terrible lives after they were back. They never really got a chance to come home mentally, though they might have come home physically. And we know a lot more now than we did then. And that's why it's important to keep up with the times and make sure that as things change, be aware of these things that folks are going to help with. Exactly.
I was watching something. It might have been a TikTok. It could have been a documentary. I don't know. But basically, the gist of what it was when they introduced the helmet into warfare, they thought it would reduce head injuries, right? But what they found was they were getting a lot more head injuries, and they were confused as to why this was happening. And it was just that more people were living.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like stuff used to kill you real quick. Now, a lot of times it takes, or it didn't kill you, it maimed you. You come home scarred and disfigured. And there's no, like, especially, World War I, even World War II, there's no prescription on how to kind of deal with that. I feel.
No, and
especially when the scars are not visible.
I go back to George Carlin's bit where he runs up from World War I all the way up through the Gulf conflicts, where through each of these conflicts, in World War I we had shell shock. In World War II, they referred to it as operational exhaustion.
Battle fatigue. Yeah.
Battle fatigue.
Oh, yeah, it was battle fatigue, then operational exhaustion.
Then, Korea came along, there was operational exhaustion, and Vietnam came along, it was a little softer. Now we have PTSD. And I think that the one point that he makes that sticks out in my mind is when it was rough language and it sounded awful, people cared more. And people tried to do more. And as we soften the language, I don't think there's enough people out there that are as shaken by it. And I
think we're at a point in time right now where you have to soften the language. So, because if you were to say somebody has shell shock to somebody today, they would think they were completely out of their minds.
It's also a little too broad now.
Like you soften the language, you soften the condition, you soften how people look at you.
Yes.
I think, Mike, you did put you hit something on the head. Very, very, very well put point. The thing about especially PTSD as we know it nowadays, the reason why it's much more in the forefront now, despite what it is called now, 22 is a number that you, Big Daddy, know very well with your work with VA. That's the average of how many veterans die by suicide every day. This happens whether it doesn't discriminate in terms of what period of service you served. It happens. There's a lot of things you're dealing with chronic issues that don't go away. Also, you're dealing with things that there's very few people you can talk about that really you feel safe to talk to or wouldn't get it if you talked to them about it. And that's very sad that it's much more. It's not that it's never been present. It has been. But now, because the media, thankfully, has brought more attention to it in different ways, more people are much more aware of it and exactly what kind of stuff to look for and what question to ask much better than they did years ago. So in that way, it's better in terms of like, we know a little bit more about it. We know what question to ask. Are you okay? How are you doing? What's going on?
I have a very dear friend who was in from the late 90s, mid to late 90s and into the early 2000s. And he's okay, but he's working his way through PTSD every day. I mean, it's not something that goes away. You can hang a name on it, but it's always a constant charge against it. Yeah. But one of the things that he's run into is he was never actually in a real what was anything that was legally and by all accounts a war. He went to police actions and scuffles and skirmishes, whatever word you want to use, but nothing was ever a declared war that he saw. So he runs into that with trying to.
I will share this with you, Mike, because one of our clients is a gentleman that sounds, in a way, he has something familiar. The VA at first did not look at his claim for PTSD, anxiety, depression, as they should have, because they saw him as he was a flight engineer aboard aircraft. Well, you were just flying back and forth. It wasn't until we gave more information to the VA to understand that he was part of the air crew that would fly to Iraq and Afghanistan, bring home the remains of the dead in caskets draped with flags and fly them back to Dover Air Force Base. And the hardest thing for him was not the flight. It was seeing the look on the faces of the families when their family was coming home, and especially how they were coming home.
And that's hard.
That's something that the VA at first, because they were kind of thinking not outside the box in terms of, so what were you doing? You're not flying overhead. He goes, so what else went into your duties? Mm-hmm. Once they realized that, they finally realized that, wow, no wonder. So it took a little while. But yes, the VA understood that, yeah, there's a lot more to that job than what the title says. There's much more that goes with it.
Yep. Yeah. And just because you brought Dover up, Dover does a fantastic job with what they do. We receive, it is the clearinghouse mortuary for anybody in the military. They come through Dover, and Dover does a fantastic job.
Yes.
At what they do, and they take it very seriously down there.
Yes.
I've never served, but I played a lot of Call of Duty, and I've seen some digital carnage. I have seen some computer generated horrors, really. So
A virtual
I'm dealing with that. That's my own personal struggle. That's a terrible joke.
Well, I will share
I'll
with you,
apologize for that.
if it's okay, Matt. I will share this because this really kind of links into one of my friends. He was a very grandfather figure type member of the VFW until he passed away a few years ago. He also was a Korean War veteran. He served, though, in the Army. The one thing about him is he had been a commander for the VFW here back in the 50s after he got home. However, he went to dental school in Philadelphia to be a dental surgeon at the same place where Doc Holliday went to Philadelphia to become a dental surgeon. That's how he got his term doc. However, instead of rebuilding jaws, which they thought there he was going to be sent to in Korea, he ended up being assigned to the first MASH unit that was established in Korea. And he was assigned one of the grimmest tasks you could have, that when somebody had to have a saw to go ahead and to potentially go ahead and amputate a limb, that was the man that got stuck with that type of job. He spent most of his life doing a lot of drawing, a lot of painting along the Maine seacoast, and spend time with his wife and his children and grandchildren. But that's something that he said very, very little about to a lot of people. But he got to the point where he was comfortable with me, and he would just share some of that. And just to know that that was going on inside, though outside, he was like my grandfather and always had words of wisdom and encouragement. I can't even imagine the type of horror, even after all that long, to try to live with that. Even though you're home, you're not really home. There's a lot of you that's always going to be there.
Yeah.
No, I was actually talking about this with my wife the other night. There with my grandfather. He was in World War II and Korea and in the Navy, and there were the war stories that Pop told, and they always ended with a chuckle. And there was never anything terribly awful going on when they heard him. In fact, one of them was when he was in Korea. They woke up one morning and went out on deck of the Wisconsin, and it was snowing. So everybody was throwing snowballs, and he had a bunch of guys build a snow lady. And actually, down at the Wisconsin Museum down in Norfolk now, his picture is in rotation in the slideshow as you wait to go in. It's my grandfather and a couple of guys that
Nice.
they built with their snow lady. And it was neat because that was a story that we always heard about. And my aunt went down and she was waiting in line to go in to visit Pop's ship. And she looked up and she tapped her husband. She said, "Look, there's Dad. We always heard that story. There's a picture of it." So after hearing that, I was able to go and track that photo down. It lived online because it appeared in one of the military publications, and it's a photo that I keep around the house here, and it's special because there was, like I said, there was only certain things he would share with us. I know that my uncle, who was a submariner, that married one of my aunts, I know that he talked with Pop at much greater length about naval experience, but there was one time. And I learned very quickly, you don't ask questions. I was pulled aside by my guidance counselor in high school who said, "Hey, I remember your grandfather. We kind of knew each other here at home on the street, just, to pass one another because, we were in town together." He said, "But I remember, when I went to the Marines, he went to the Navy, and then World War II. And we heard this great story of how his ship came upon these wrecks as they were headed into Guadalcanal. So they put a couple of launches out, and your grandfather was on the first launch, and he reached over, and the first guy's arm he grabbed and pulled onto the boat to save was his first cousin. And wow, that was just such a great story." I said, "Wow, I've never heard that." I said to Pop one day, I said, "Hey, I was talking to Pete Grandel, and Pete said this," and my grandfather looked at me and said, "Yes, that happened. No, we don't talk about it. Please don't ever ask again." And I mean, that's all that was said, but I learned very quickly that there's an etiquette to it. But it's all a matter of what you can relate and what you're willing to relate and how somebody processes it. And you guys are doing great work to help the guys come home and figure that out, because that's part of coming home, is figuring out how that works for you so that you can move on.
Process.
It warms the soul if you can do that. I've said to some people, including Matt, I say it sort of tongue in cheek, but no, it comes from the heart, is that anyone says this type of work does not do something to warm your soul, well, then you might want to make sure you have one, because if not, maybe you should work for the IRS or someplace else, a parking authority, things like that. I say it kind of funny, but not, is that if it does not affect you in some way, in a good way like that, then I'm not sure what you're working at, but that's what you really should be doing. It's well worth it.
Well, it's I mean, I don't know what else. I don't want to keep, that's fantastic, but I am really impressed.
It is fantastic.
It's been very educational. Like I was telling you before, I'm 48 years old. I didn't know half this stuff. My brother's 20 years older. He didn't know half this. He didn't know that the VFW was a resource for help. And I think that's an important message to get out. And I think, that's why you're talking to us. And I really appreciate you coming and talking to us, John. Taking the time. How you feeling? You too tired? I'm at
that age where after 8 p.m. I'm generally tired anyway, because that's the age that I'm at. So no, but that's okay. All kidding aside, but truthfully, he goes, to be able to discuss what we do in this type of format is a first, and I thank you, because I've known you for 30 years, and this is very, very kind and very thoughtful to invite me to be part of this. I thank you very much, all of you, for making me feel very welcome.
Well, thanks for again. Thanks for your time. We understand that we're taking away from your sleep.
So glad.
There's no beauty sleep. I look like this whether I'm awake or not, so that's okay. Don't worry about that.
the one thing you mentioned, this format. Part of our format that Matt and I have talked about when we decided to build this show is, aside from making each other laugh, we also wanted to use this platform for, bunch of older guys. We're rounding the bend on 50. Trying to understand the world around us, and we've had all kinds of folks, and we want to have as many more folks as we can, just to help us understand what's going on around us, and how people are being helped, and how we can help that.
If you're I'm happy to put it out there, if there's anything like things pop up on your radar, or folks ask you, and you too, Big Daddy, because the work that you've done, I'd love to even have both of us on, because you from the VA put side of the fence in terms of this is what we would need from you, what we do. That would be terrific. I'd be more than happy to do that. Field questions, anything.
We'll see what we can, put together on that front. I think that's a good idea. I know Mike was, had an idea about, the VFW, we could help the VFW set up a podcast.
Whether it's level or somebody. I know that your main organization, your headquarters, does have a podcast. I saw that on the website.
Oh, yeah.
But if there's anybody down the chain that needs help with consulting work on doing that, we're open to helping out in that regard.
Sure. And that's I'm more than happy to do this anytime. Matt, you've been all of you have been wonderful hosts. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming on, Johnny. It was great seeing you.
You too.
It was good to catch up. I'm glad, and we're gonna be talking more about another topic.
Yep.
But it was just nice to kind of hear about, not just hearing about what you. Honestly, man, I probably would have had you on just if if you worked at a Home Depot. I'd be like, hey, you want to come on? But I mean, the fact that you're doing something really, really, beneficial. It's a net good, and there ain't a lot of people that work and provide a net good, so I'm thankful that you came on and gave us your time, and I'm proud. Sorry, pardon my French. I'm proud of you, man. Well,
you're from New Jersey. If you don't have at least one word like that, I would be very concerned about you.
No, I've been. It's hard. My mom won't watch the show because of how much I curse. And I didn't realize how bad it was until I went back and I don't curse that much. And then I went back and looked at the first one, and I had a tantrum out of the gate. And I'm like, how do I not remember having this tantrum? Like something was going wrong, and I was just losing it.
We've worked on it though.
Yeah, we may want to consider ending it here on this note rather than ending it with a different segment that would change slightly the flavor.
Yeah, you are in the next segment, Big Daddy.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking perhaps we should skip that so that we can end on this note instead of that.
I'm sorry.
I understand.
Is your time? I'm sorry. I hope not.
No. I genuinely feel that this time is better dedicated to what you bring.
That's really kind of you. Thank you so much.
Yes. See, Big Daddy, as you noticed, he came in, late. And he often comes in much later. He was an original cast member where he'd stay the whole time, but he has many projects that he likes to work on. We are not a priority by any stretch of the imagination. He does not care about this show at all. And so what we had him do is, like, if you can't be here, film a segment, that at least you'll be on the show. And he has 2 segments that we normally do. And the kind of caveat is we don't look at the segment before we air it. So
I know
he's saying, he's warning us as to how, and this is just the tips number 100.
Big celebration.
This is a celebratory. So this is the part where
it would be wiser.
It would be. I understand what you're saying to me right now, Johnny.
You're welcome to stay.
You are welcome. You are more than welcome to stay.
Well, just as long as anything is said here, though, and he goes when my folks that I talked to in Washington. I mean, there's a couple things that come out of it. One, they might go, "So what kind of show were you on?" And the second might go, "That's some of the funniest stuff I've heard." Depending who hears it. So it could be. Think of it as like, there's out of every silver lining, there's out of every cloud there's a silver lining. Gomez Adams used to say. You never know.
I was thinking if there's every silver lining, there's a huge cloud apart. God, what?
Well, I say it only because the actor that played Gomez Adams, John Astin, just turned 94.
He did.
Yesterday or day before.
Yeah.
Last surviving member of that cast. Yes.
Yep.
Wow.
Right down in Baltimore, too.
Yes. And if you like Edgar Allan Poe, that man has been brilliant at reading his poetry for a long time. He's absolutely brilliant at it.
Good to know.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, Johnny, like I said, you are welcome to stay, but it is all downhill from here.
Okay. In case that it is my bedtime. But
yeah,
I'd be honored to come back on whenever you guys want me on. I'm very, very happy.
No, absolutely. I love talking to you. I think you're fun. Even if you want to come over and, if you want to come on and talk about, whatever you want. It doesn't have to be VFW, but it's nice to know that there's, an organization.
Yes. Yeah, that thing in the background. Yeah, and he goes, I do it because, one, it looks more handsome than me. The face in front of it, it's nice and bright and shiny, like that. So I work for them, and I do this because I love the work I do. And just like you pointed out, there's a lot of folks that only know VFW that there's cheap beer there. No, there's a lot more. That's not what we were at the beginning and at our core. Even though we have posts, we still stick to the things that why we started in the first place. We still do those things.
Fantastic.
Well, that's fantastic. I think on that note, we should bring it to a close here, Mike.
When I put the show notes together that are going to accompany this audio post, I'll make sure that there are links to vfw.org so everybody can go and get hooked up with anything they may need from VFW.
That's awesome.
On that note, I'm going to play a bumper, and we're going to reset the tape. We'll see you for the C block right after this.
Thank you so much, all of you. It's really nice to meet you, Big Daddy. How are you?
Likewise.
What I'll do is that probably in a later show when I can say things without the filter behind me. And he goes, "Yes, I'm glad to be on with you and spend some time talking to you as well. I'd love to do that again."
Excellent.
Thanks, man. We really appreciate it.
I say, take care. I love you.
You got,
You're awesome. Kim loves you too. She says, "Stay out of trouble. At least don't get."
Oh
caught."
yeah, say hi to Kim for me. Absolutely.
Say it out loud.
Hey.
Hey Kim.
Amen to mud water, man.
Yeah, she's got mud water, so she says amen. She goes to that church too.
Oh yeah, I love it. I think it's a whole different type of energy. I've explained it. It's different. It's like different than caffeine.
At least when you say mud water, it comes in a can. It looks nice because mud water to me would go, you scoop up your bucket you played in the backyard with out of the Delaware over in Palmyra, and that's what you get. There's a big difference between that type you enjoy.
Yeah, no, that's not what I'm talking about, John.
I know. That's what I mean. I'm glad you're more specific about that. Thank you. Okay. I love you guys. Take care. Stay safe. Okay.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.